The Season 3 meta has developed in some really interesting ways. Certain characters got buffed, eating up more pick rate share and warping other characters around them, while other characters resumed their dominance from 2.5. There are also some underrated characters that are dominating behind the scenes for tank, DPS, and support, plus new compositions that are starting to arrive. That's why in this video, we're going to do a full meta breakdown for 3.0 so you know exactly what to do in Season 3 to give yourself the best shot of climbing, remaining competitive, and continuing to dominate as we move to 3.5 very soon. But first, I gotta tell y'all about Supervive, a brand new MOBA battle royale made by former Riot, Bungie, and Blizzard devs that's so freaking sick. Everybody talks about the glory days where those big companies made amazing games, but the devs are still developing games to this day. They just work on different projects, Supervive being one of the best. You can choose between a variety of characters that all fit your specific playstyle. And there are so many characters that are extremely high skill, where if you're just better than your opponents, you can consistently dominate lobbies. There's a ton of skill expression in your movement and ability to fight people over the abyss. Doing damages to enemies over the abyss or over a vat will actually spike them down, leading to some insane playmaking capabilities where you can literally clutch up against an entire team and bring your whole squad back alive. Now, I've personally been playtesting this game for actually 2 years, and I got to see the entire development process. And now that the game is officially launched in 1.0, it's so sick to see the game fully actualized, and you get to see all the consistent feedback they took in and turn the game into something really special. I'm really excited about the Armory, a meta progression system that they just added that changes how the game will be played. Now make sure to download the game on Steam in the description down below using my tracking link and enter code CoachMills in the store to get a Secret Agent Shiv skin. Super sick character, by the way, you definitely got to check her out. Now honestly, I do love Supervive, so I'm extremely excited for you to try it out and tell me what you think. Check it out right now in the description down below. Now, as far as the patch notes of Season 3, the developers made very targeted changes to some of the most powerful compositions. Rather than bulldozing compositions completely, there were some buffs and nerfs that tweak certain things, but as you know, when small things get changed, sometimes it affects larger things, like when one character has a good matchup against another, and then that character's weak, then the character being held back by that character is now strong. You see what I'm saying? But going right into tanks, Emma is a character that did receive some big nerfs. She actually has been nerfed, like nickel and dime nerfed over the past couple of patches, and ever since her release, it's been clear how strong she's been, and I'm here to tell you that this season's no different. Emma is still one of the most powerful characters in a vacuum in all of Marvel Rivals. Extremely powerful at just applying consistent pressure, and most importantly, denying a ton of characters and even strategies. Like the long CC plus stun alone is good, but when you have a team to back it up, there are a ton of characters that just really struggle into an Emma grab, and it's like a massive amount of characters, from characters like Magic to characters like Hulk to tanks like freaking Strange, and then of course other tanks like Venom and Cap, and that's really what it is. Emma punishes tanks so much. I'm gonna call Emma the freaking Wolverine of the tanking roster, because really what Emma's long crowd control does, that long stun, with any amount of focus fire, the amount of health a character has doesn't matter. Like Strange could have a crazy amount of health, 700 HP, but if he's grabbed, and while he's being grabbed, he's being shot at by your team because, you know, he's frontline, so he's going to be able to be easily shot, then turned and kicked back into your team, that person can just get punished and killed. And it's the same with any character. Like a Venom has a crazy amount of HP potentially, but when you combine focus fire plus Emma grab, you just get to burn through all these things. Now, there are ways to play those strategies outside of Emma, but the reality of it is, Emma is a character that demands respect and warps the entire meta around her because of how dominant she is, specifically in tank matchups. The vast majority of tank matchups, she just completely dominates, and the only tank matchup that has like reasonable game against her, Magneto, is the character that is seeing a ton of play in spite of Emma. Basically, the trends that we saw from pro play where Emma was banned at the highest rate, I don't see that changing anytime soon, even under these new set of circumstances. With focus fire being higher, the grab is still just as lethal, so Emma is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Now, let's move on to Magneto, because there's some interesting things about Magneto. Magneto is a great all-around tank that lines up with all the threats in the meta pretty much across the board. Magneto ultimate is extremely good at not only killing support ultimates, whether it's Cloak and Dagger, whether it's potentially Luna Snow if you have backup or you have high charge, or if you're denying things like Punisher ult, Star-Lord ult, even parts of Ultron ult, even parts of Human Torch ult. There's just just a lot of versatility there in that ultimate. Extremely, extremely powerful ultimate that can turn team fights, and is one of the ways that you can actually outplay many of these super powerful defensive ultimates. And because of how well he lines up against threats, we just talked about how he's the one tank that doesn't really get bullied by Emma. Magneto has one of the highest pick rates that we've seen in any meta right now, in any meta in history for rivals, and it's 61% pick rate in Celestial right now. Magneto is played at such a massive rate, and even when Strange was like the best tank, I looked back and looked at all the pick rates, nothing got above 60%. Strange was only like at like a 59% when Strange was insane back in season 1, all the way back then. And Magneto is picked at a crazy rate, and the thing is, it would be the most picked of all time if there wasn't another character on this list that we'll get to later in the support section that is actually seeing even a higher pick rate than that, which is just a little bit wild. But Magneto, generally, just good, strong, all around. Versatile is important because he plays with almost any other character, whether you're playing Magneto Thing, whether you're playing Magneto Strange, Magneto Emma, Magneto Hulk. Like, Magneto could be a solo tank. Magneto can play with weird tanks that you're playing, like Bunker with Peni. Like, Magneto is just very sticky, as in he's hard to remove from space, being able to mitigate infinite damage with his shield, and then bubble himself, have a crowd control to create that spacing, and then also does damage from range, means that he really, it's hard to run over like a Magneto, right? It's hard to force him out of an area that you want him to get out of right away. And then with all the other strengths that he has, he's just a really good all-around character right now. And the pick rate and the win rate reflects that. Now, these aren't the only tanks that are dominating. Hulk is actually still performing really, really well, especially alongside of Namor. Both of these have a rather high win rate when they're played together. They're both disruptive and strong, and they're played quite a bit. And an interesting thing here is that Hulk is becoming more and more banned. He's the second most banned character in Celestial, even over Emma, Torch, Panther, and Loki. And maybe this is because of Hulk's dominance. Maybe this is because you kind of get a 2-for-1 where you ban Hulk, you get Namor as well. But for whatever reason, Hulk is consistently being target banned, consistently being banned, and consistently winning games when he's played. So even in spite of some of Hulk's weaknesses to mass CC, something like Emma, Hulk is still finding ways to counterplay. And I really think that that's the strength of Hulk, is that he gets to basically pick and choose his engagements with that extra mobility, with his shields. He kind of gets to do what he wants to do. He plays a really good off-tank role, second fiddle role, where there's a frontline tank that really holds it down, and then Hulk gets to basically contest off angles, whether it's a Hela or a freaking Jean trying to take an off angle on your supports, whether it's a flanker or a flyer. Hulk has game against pretty much everything, really high carry potential, and with those Namor buffs that we saw previously, Namor being a lot more consistent and reliable at poke, especially with that synergy, is making Hulk just a reasonable pick right now. Very, very strong, and I think a really good pickup this season and for the preceding season soon. The other character that is actually really just skyrocketed in pick rate and win rate is the Thing. He pretty much came out of nowhere, and now he's a top 5 most picked tank in Celestial when he was one of the least picked tanks, period. And he has a much higher win rate now, almost a 3% increase in his win rate comparatively to how he was before he could jump to enemy teams and ground flyers, which I've explained before, but I'm gonna have a guide kind of breaking down exactly what this entails. It allows Thing to play completely different when he's jumping on flyers and grounding them, or whether he's jumping in to engage and then being able to dash out or just pin out. That is crowd control resistant. It gives him a lot more counterplay with his engages. He's not as reliant on a tank or a frontliner to just kind of always be trailing him. It gives him way more flexibility, and I think even the fact that he's performing this well in a meta that is heavy poke related, long distance damage dealers, that's a good sign for the Thing. But something that's kind of funny, a little bit of interesting data. There wasn't a lot of team data for Celestial games, but in GM games, which are like the top 1+-ish% right now, the Thing win rate actually goes up by 1% when he's not played with the Invis team up. Like, with the Invis team up, he has a 47.47%. And then by himself, just generally, he has a 48.53%. I've said many times that that team up is kind of just silly. It's not really that useful for the Thing in particular. But yeah, it's kind of funny. There isn't like an infinite amount of data, right? But I thought it was a funny piece of data that the Invis team up doesn't actually help the Thing. But to give some truth to why this is the case, I really just think that Luna is going to be way, way better than the Thing, especially having really long defensive ultimates is really strong with the Thing because he wants to play in them. He wants to get active when both support ults are being traded, right? They're using a Luna ult, you're using a Luna ult. He's able to stay in the ult, build basically another ultimate in that ult. So I think this is just another lesson in general that just because a character has like an ability team up does not mean that the characters actually fit the best together. In a lot of cases, that's actually not true. My case in point for that would be like Captain America and Bucky team up. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is actually Strange. He's actually picked in the top 5 most picked tanks, but he has the lowest win rate overall. And I do think that Strange is one of those tanks that suffers more in that Emma matchup. Like, we've been getting some buffs to Strange here and there after all those mountain of nerfs that Strange received. But of course, when he finally starts feeling good again, his biggest op as an Emma just comes out of nowhere. And you are sacrificing a lot when you're not playing an Emma. Like, playing Magneto Strange is still good. You provide a lot of shield pressure, a lot of blocking, a lot of mitigation, but like you lose something that you're not getting with Emma's grab and CC. But Strange is still picked quite a bit and winning games, so he's not completely out of it. And I actually do think that Strange in particular is good on maps where there is verticality to challenge. On any map with a high ground that DPS like to sit and, you know, set up, being able to flush out a Loki, flush out a Punisher, flush out a Hela is super strong that Strange can do that a lot of these other tanks can't. Like, Emma and Magneto are going to be staring up at it from down below, but they can't jump up there, right? But Strange can do that. And of course, Strange is also a character that does have a slightly inflated pick rate because he is always used for ports and stuff like that. Now, moving on to DPS, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Wolf. And I can't really include Wolf in like a meta discussion as far as what is picked because he's just banned all the damn time. In Grandmaster Plus matches, Wolverine is banned over 50% of the time, which is a crazy stat, by the way. This character is banned maybe more than we've seen any character banned in history. Even coming off of those changes, those slight nerfs to his team up, those nerfs to his damage to tanks that he did receive has come almost like a hotfix patch because of how dominant he was. He is still being banned at a giant rate. He really isn't played in a lot of matches because of how banned he is. And this isn't really a balanced discussion video, but I do think that it's clear that Wolverine is a character that needs addressing more than just about any other character. Having a character that is permanently on the ban list like this is definitely a balanced red alarm, but you tell me, how do you feel about Wolf? What would you do to change him, to balance him? Would you completely rework him? Would you just make him heavily weaker? How would you do it, and why? Is Wolverine a necessary evil? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, the most picked DPS that are actually played are kind of a tie between Bucky and Pheonix. They're the most picked DPS in GM+. Now, Bucky, though, on one hand, has a really bad win rate in Celestial at 45%, and it actually goes up slightly the further down you go in Elo. He gets to almost a 50% win rate all the way down in the lowest of ranks, but as you climb higher, he gets worse and worse. And I really think the basic reason for this is because Bucky's weakest matchups are long-distance damage dealers that are mechanically difficult to play. Think characters like Hela and even Hawkeye. These characters are really, really good against the Bucky, and those players or people that play those characters can't aim particularly well, or those characters just aren't played in the lower ranks. Also, Bucky is better when things are chaos, when things are random, when you have less resources, when you have less heals, when you have less pressure, less frontline. Bucky is like good in those chaotic situations when there's divers left, right, and center. That's where Bucky really thrives. But even still, Bucky is being played quite a bit. Even though he's not necessarily winning a crazy amount, he is still winning relatively okay to his pick rate. It's fine. I think Bucky is a bit overrated though at this point. Pheonix, on the other hand, has about the same pick rate, but has multiple percentage points higher, up to 2 to 3 percentage points higher win rate. So a healthier win rate with about the same pick rate. A character that is actually seeing a lot of play, rising to people picking up the character after release, and actually performing well. And I think this will probably go up with time as people get better at the character. But there's also reason to believe that Pheonix is a character that people picked up easier than other releases because she's not that much different than other characters that we have. Really good Hela players would be really good Pheonix players very quickly. Now moving on from those, Psylocke is still extremely picked and extremely powerful, and we looked into the team-up win rates of Emma plus Psylocke, and that has nearly a 56% win rate in Grandmaster plus lobbies, which is more even than the team-up of Namor plus Hulk, and is the most when we talk about team-ups that are picked a massive amount, besides one team-up that we'll talk about a little bit later that is just winning at a dumb rate. But Emma and Psylocke in general is one of the most powerful, flexible, and winning team compositions or team duos, and I think it should be played more. Like, it's actually crazy that this isn't played as much. I think maybe it comes down to the difficulty of Psylocke. Very difficult character to play at a very, very high level and perfect level. But it is interesting that both Emma and Psylocke are characters that are this strong and this potentially dominant, but they actually dodge the ban list quite a bit. They are not getting on the ban list all that much, and maybe it's because the players are not always good enough to capitalize on that. Like, there's a difference between a okay Psylocke and an amazing Psylocke. But I honestly do think that due to this data, the Emma Psylocke just locking that duo in like pretty much a variety of compositions is extremely powerful right now in ranked, and it's also gonna be the bedrock for a lot of pro metas. I'm absolutely sure of it. Emma and Psylocke are gonna see a ton of play going into this next tournament cycle. Now, a lot of people are wondering, what about Hela? What has happened to Hela? And Hela is actually a reasonable DPS that has a high pick rate and win rate. Actually, not higher than, of course, characters like Bucky and Pheonix, but still reasonably high, above 10%, and a higher win rate, actually, than characters like Bucky and Pheonix, even if just slightly more than Pheonix. And the pick rate that has gone down on Hela is, in large part, directly proportional to the pick rate that Pheonix has gained. So it's obvious that there's a lot of Hela players that are right now playing, you know, Pheonix for season 3. Will that always be the case? Maybe not. I think depending on the situation, depending on the power level, there is going to be people jumping back and forth. But a lot of Hela players added Pheonix to their hero pool. So whichever one is going to be the most dominant in any given meta, they can just lock and play. But Hela is still very, very strong. And I'm honestly super interested going forward in this variant style of new hero induction, right? Because in a lot of ways, Pheonix is almost like a Hela variant, a version of Hela that has different tools and different strengths, but there's a lot of things that overlap, which is really the first we've seen out of this, out of any character. But I would imagine we could see this more in the future. You know, certain characters that they have another version of that character and just has slightly different skill set. Think of all the damn Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. Of course, we don't want too many of them, but you see what I'm saying is where not every character has to be completely 100% just unique to itself or with a completely different kit. It could be just slightly differences in the kits. But does that make it really hard to ban characters if there's like a different type of the same character, and if you ban one they can just play the other version? Does that make it difficult? I don't know. You let me know down below. The last DPS that we got to talk about is actually Torch, which Torch has kind of been talked about as being such a dominant character, seeing play in pro tournaments and pro scrims, also seeing play in really high elo lobbies as this like all-around threat, high pick rate, ban rate, and win rate. Really just a great character overall. And well, we did talk about that Invisible Woman, the Invisible Woman thing team up that actually decreased his win rate. It does actually increase his win rate here. It actually increases it by 1%. So surprise, surprise, a little bit of extra health goes a lot further on a flyer that wants to survive than like a giant rock, okay? it's I'm a genius. What can I say? I figured it out. Okay, I'm just trolling. Sorry. Anyways, Torch is just really good and really strong, but a lot of players haven't really picked up to the fact that he is so strong. Like, we're seeing only this amount of ban rate and really high pick rate in the highest ranks, but in a lot of the other ranks, they're not quite doing it yet. So I do imagine that as this meta keeps moving on, more and more people are going to be picking up Torch. So we're gonna have to wait and see exactly how he develops, but he is a character that is just capable of being extremely hard to kill and constantly just outputs so much pressure on the enemy team, whittles down their cooldowns and resources, and then when any enemy makes a positional mistake, he can just blitz them and just get kills. So he has a really powerful all-rounded kit and is playing really well in this meta that is pretty much poke, that has like a lot of attrition built in with these really powerful defensive ultimates. Torch is playing well into that. Now, last but certainly not least, the supports, which right now in this meta, I think supports are dictating more than anything else. They are really demanding certain answers to their power, and they are warping entire compositions around them. And the first character we got to talk about is Luna, which has the literal highest pick rate in the top lobbies in Celestial right now than we've ever seen in any character in the entire game of Rivals since Season 0. And it's a 64.64% pick rate in Celestial. That's just crazy. Like, Luna is played so much to a massive amount. And I kind of saw this coming. I think most people did when Luna was already super dominant, super played. And then they continuously buffed her and gave her good team ups and things like that. And then at the same time, nerfed her competition. And a lot of these defensive ultimates made them weaker and made like a lot of ults harder to charge. So Luna's just this powerhouse. And 12-second ultimate is, I think, such a big part of this meta. Being able to last for 12 seconds in an ultimate and then have Loki copy it and just last forever. It is interesting though that Luna is just not really banned like all that much. But Luna is almost not banned at all, even though she has such a dominant pick rate. And I think it comes down to the fact that Luna isn't a threat. Like, people like to ban threats, right? They don't really like to ban answers. Luna is the most powerful answer. She has such a powerful answer to so many different things. She's so reliable in her heals, so reliable in her damage. But you could always beat a Luna by mirroring a Luna, right? That's the idea here. But you can't always do that with other characters. And maybe this whole concept is wrong. Maybe people should be banning Luna Snow more. And I actually think that there's some argument to be made that any character that is being picked that much is definitely due for more bans, more pick bans, and you know, forcing people off of this super long sustained composition. But yeah, I think it's obvious that Luna is crazy strong, and I am curious what the devs are going to do going forward about, you know, Luna and her power level and her ultimate. I think that a lot of people have kind of complained about this like really long 12-second ultimate, or 24 with Loki. But even in spite of the complaints, we still have had it for a long time, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So I'm wondering if the devs just want this answer to be strong. They want these answers to be strong, and they're going to keep these defensive ultimates almost more powerful than their offensive counterparts in a lot of ways, or if we're due to see like a nerf to that seconds, you know, down to 10, you know, something along those lines. I don't know, but this is some ridiculous pick rate right now, and it's hard to deny just how powerful Luna is and how strong she is warping the meta. And of course, her dynamic duo, her partner in crime, Loki, at a 42% pick rate in Celestial with a massive pick rate plus change. He's been gaining more and more pick rate and has a crazy amount as well. Pretty much picked up a lot of the pick rate that was like lost from other supports leaving the meta, which we'll talk a little bit in a bit, and has a dominant win rate, 54% win rate, which is massive for such a high pick rate. Like, you gotta understand that when characters are picked at a mass amount, like a crazy amount, there's some unoptimized picking of these characters that typically hurt their win rate. And so characters that have like above 20%, their win rate typically drops because they're picked almost too much. Like, there's like an overcorrection, right? So characters that have a massive pick rate but are still like 50% win rate are insanely busted. Characters like Luna, characters like Magneto, or maybe not bust is the right word, but just they are living up to that hype. You're living up to that hype of pick rate. And it's okay if your character drops down a little bit. It still shows that your character is really dominant. But when a character has that high a pick rate, 42%, which is one of the highest pick rates in the entire game, but still has a 52% win rate, that's just like the character's busted. I mean, he's insane. Loki is insane. I actually do think that Loki is perhaps the strongest character in the entire game based on these stats, especially for ranked play. And he's banned actually more so than Luna. He's actually banned at a 6% rate, so more than, you know, other characters, more than Luna. And it's actually kind of funny because I think a lot of those bannings come from DPS players that know Loki can deny what they want to do, whether it's a Psylocke or a diver or whatever, and not because of Loki's objective power level. Once again, it kind of shows that people don't really want to ban answers. They only think about threats, but that's not how pro play sees it. Pro play bans Emmas, pro play bans Magnetos, pro play bans Lunas and Lokis. You don't see these bans that much in ranked play. People only think about the threats. They don't think about the answers, and they don't think about why they lost to an answer, why they lost to 24 seconds of ultimates, but they are losing to them a lot, and people are losing to Loki a lot, and Loki is winning a lot. So I cannot recommend Loki enough. I think he's just incredible. He's just insanely strong. And it's a hard sell for me to recommend you maining any character besides Loki and Luna as a support unless you already know these characters and you're like flexing to those other ones in certain situations. Because let's talk about some of these other supports for a second and the pros and cons of a lot of them. I think third I wanted to talk about is Invis, who's really just doing really poor in general. A bottom 5 win rate in the entire game in Celestial. Extremely low win rate comparatively. Now, she doesn't have like 2% pick rate, right? She has a reasonably high pick rate, so it's not actually as bad as a lot of these bottom feeder characters or characters that really are just not doing well, but it's nowhere near the excellent dominance of many of these top characters. Like, that low of a win rate when picked at such a high rate means that the character is massively overpicked and due for a correction, and I think there's a lot of reasons for why Invis is struggling. The first and most important reason is that Luna and Loki are just gonna be better in the head-to-head, especially when we talk about that ultimate. Invisible ultimate is so much worse in comparison to a Luna ultimate. We're seeing that more and more, putting your team in a fixed area that you could be pulled out of, that y'all could be killed through, that y'all could be swept up by any number of crowd control and CC. And then when you think about the utility that Invisible provides, I mean, Loki also provides a crazy amount of utility. Luna has a lot of good built-in utility, and really Invis is just lagging behind these other competitors. And it's funny because even though Invis has like a 45% win rate, when she's with Torch, she skyrockets like 8%. So Invisible is really good with Torch, and you can maybe utilize her to enable flyers in certain cases, especially flyer with team up like Torch. But in general, Invisible Woman is really performing very, very poorly. She's playing a replacement Luna at best, and most of the time, I don't even think she's worth that because Cloak is doing really well right now, interestingly. Her pick rate has fallen going into season 3, but she is still doing reasonably well with 2% more win rate, but the same pick rate as Invis. So you compare them head to head, Cloak is getting picked just as much, winning 2% more. That's a really big deal. I think a lot of the reasons why Cloak is seeing play is because she provides different things than characters like Luna and Loki, right? The ability to build your ultimate incredibly fast. Luna and Loki have really powerful ultimates, but they do take a while to charge. Cloak can get it first. Cloak can beat them by 30%. That's a really big deal when you're trying to tempo a fight. In addition to that, being able to cloak and then, you know, blind people, add damage so that you could potentially kill through defensive ultimates, that's also really, really strong. So both those things combined, really, really good. Being able to focus fire team kill stuff and also being able to tempo ults really fast and build ults really fast. It's a way to go under the absolute power of Luna Loki 24 seconds. That's a really big deal. So I would actually recommend something here. If you're looking for an alternative to Luna Loki, look Cloak this season instead of Invisible Woman, unless you're specifically enabling a flyer. Of course, we gotta talk about Rocket, my boy Rocket. I actually just watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3 again. I love that freaking movie, man. It's so good. But anyways, completely random tangent. Rocket has completely fallen off of a cliff in his pick rate, dropping by 24% in Celestial. Almost all of his losses have been directly picked up by Loki and Luna. And what we're kind of seeing here is the end to like players just kind of trying to figure crap out, trying to experiment a lot more. We're seeing massive homogenization in what is working and what is good at the high ends of play. We're not seeing a lot of experimentation, random things that are seeing play as much in the supporting roster. It's just the dominant things are eating up all the pick rate, and the stuff that are not as dominant are being stripped away. Rocket is one of them. Now, he's not completely out of the picture. He's actually still seeing a little bit of play here and there, and there is one team up that I do want to talk about that is still really dominant with Rocket later, but right now, his ultimate is too weak. And no, it's not because of Pheonix using her ult to destroy the ultimate. You can actually focus that, and in high elos, people are focusing that pretty easily, right? Being able to use that damage boost to just shoot the ultimate, you can do that, and you can just, you know, break it and save your Rocket ult. The weakness here is, once again, same problem with Invis, it's the Loki Luna. When you pop this ult that gives your team survivability and damage, and they just Luna ult walk up to it and break it, you're just getting no value. You're maybe getting 4 seconds of an ultimate, and then you're all just being crushed by another 8 seconds of the remaining ultimate that keeps their team alive. Like, Rocket ult, unfortunately, is just lagging behind, and I know I sound like a broken record, but that's just the power of these ultimates, the Luna Loki combo package deal that I really, really think is warping this meta in such a strong way. Perhaps too much. Perhaps this is too strong, but for now, this is what you should be abusing. If you want to win games, if you want to win games as a backline, Luna Loki will destroy any other support comp backline. If they are playing a Rocket and an Invis, and they have a Rocket ult, every time they pop Rocket ult, you pop a Luna ult, walk forward, break it, they pop Invis, your ult ends, you pop your Loki ult, you still have a massive amount of seconds on the back end. Just a crazy amount of seconds on the back end. You would have like 8 seconds of ultimate when they have none. It's just so much stronger, so much better. Not to mention the combo ability with Luna damage boost with so many ultimates. Like every ultimate in the game can be damage boosted in a way to be super, super powerful, whether it's Phoenix ultimate damage boost to kill invisible ultimate, whether it's freaking Thor even, like, I mean, there's just so much. There's just way too much. It's all great when you damage boost it. And really, I just want to paint the picture here of the support dominance, the support supremacy of Luna Loki right now in the meta, warping everything. Very, very good. Now, let's talk about some comps. What comps are seeing play? What comps are not seeing play? What trends are we seeing? First off, res comp. Almost no data because it's barely being played at all. When it is being played, it is winning, but it's hard to know whether or not that is because, you know, Smurfs are playing it or whatever. It's very, very little games played. I do think that res comp will still see pro play. It's too strong to not see pro play, but as far as ranked play at all, res comp is basically just non-existent, seeing almost no play, which is surprising because I do think that this composition is really strong, especially when you play like Mantis, Loki, Luna, and then you play a Star-Lord and 2 tanks, you know, Emma, Mag, boom, great composition. Now, we do got to talk about flyer comp, and the mass flyer comp just doesn't see as much play. Storm, Jeff still see a little bit of play, but it is funny to think about how people were so scared of this synergy back in 2.5, and it just turned out to not really be a big deal once people figured out ways to counteract it, avoid it, and things like that. Ultron as a whole is just underperforming, low pick rate, low win rate after his nerfs, and it's affecting all the flyers. We're just not really seeing a mass amounts of flyer compositions. We are seeing Torch do well, but that's about it as far as a character that is consistently played, banned, and winning. But Iron Man is doing okay, but he has fallen quite a bit as well. I think flying as a whole, the flying meta composition is something that they have neutered quite severely. But I will say something that is super underrated is actually triple support Ultron is really good against divers like Black Panther. Maybe I'll make a video about it. It's a really good way to counter that comp. Then number 3 is Brawl Comp, and we are seeing a return of Brawl Comp. I actually imagine that we'll see more Brawl going forward in pro play. We haven't had enough tournaments to really showcase all the changes, with so many different changes happening so quickly. But with Groot being reasonable right now, Bucky being better than he was, Namor being good, Loki and Luna as a backline being great, and then Emma kind of being a wild card that could be played with the composition, I do think that Brawl is actually potentially very, very powerful, you know, hooking people in, walling people off. A composition that we've seen in the past that was really strong when it did see play, but even though I think this is a meta possibility, the general population hasn't really embraced Groot fully. Groot, even though he is winning when he is played, he's not played all that much right now. I would go as far as to say that Groot's a bit underrated, but as we've seen in the past, we need pros to start doing something to get the general population to embrace it at the high level, because there's a lot of emulation going on. Something is good, but no one's playing it until they see pros do it, and they do it well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is actually the Bunker Peni. This is the highest win rate duo relative to the pick rate in Grandmaster Plus games. Peni plus Rocket Bunker has a 64.73% win rate. That's just absurd, right? That's just so nuts. And of course, they're not whipping this out in any situation, but I just think on the maps that it's good in, you know, you have such a high chance of first point holding when you Peni, Rocket, Bunker. It's actually very difficult to beat and play against unless you swap accordingly. I think a lot of people in rank don't swap accordingly and they just lose to it because they can't get through it. I've lost to it. I know I've been held by it a lot. I know I've held with it before in games that just seemed unwinnable. So I think it's really strong to whip it out in your back pocket. Maybe too strong in some cases, but it is interesting how high that win rate is. But is there anything in this video that shocked you? Is there anything that you were like, wow, I can't believe this is how the meta is moving? And is there any predictions you have for how the meta will continue to move going forward? I'm really excited about that Thing Torch team up. We flying in, baby. That's going to be super sick. I wonder how strong it's going to be. We'll have to wait and see. But anyways, smash the like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Definitely check out Supervive in the links down below. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time. But make sure to check out Supervive in the links down below and use my code CoachMills for a free Shiv skin. Check it out, guys. You're going to love it down below.